We value clean air and water while delivering safe, reliable, and affordable electricity that enhances your comfort, security, and quality of life. Minnesota Power. And the Muriel Whiteside Charitable Trust.
I'm Dennis Anderson along with Pamela Fish, and here's what's coming up on Almanac North.
The cold and flu season is here, and it's time to take the usual precautions. But this year, talk has turned to more deadly infectious diseases. We'll have an update.
Well, the Twin Ports is one of 26 places in the country with a shot at a $5 million grant from the Knight Foundation. And your idea could be the winner.
And we'll talk with the author of a new book that recalls the days of the streetcar in the Twin Ports.
These stories, much more, coming up next on Almanac North. Hello and welcome to Almanac North. Thank you very much for watching. Pamela Fish is here tonight filling in for Julie. Pam, welcome back.
Good to always be here with you, Denny.
All right, great to have you. We've got a lot going on, so I'll give it back to you.
Let's get underway. Thanks, Denny. With cold weather arriving, the cold and flu season is right around the corner. Health officials are expecting a normal influenza season and encouraging folks to get the full vaccine. But they're also answering a lot of questions about the enterovirus, which is spreading in the Midwest, and also about the chance of an Ebola outbreak in the U.S. Here to answer some of those questions is Dr. Linda Van Etta of St. Luke's Infectious Disease Associates. Welcome. Thank you so much for being with us. We know it's a really busy time for you right now.
It has been a busy time being the hospital epidemiologist for the St. Luke system. So
I bet it is because, you know, people are really concerned about Ebola. And maybe you could just start by telling us what it is.
Well, Ebola is a hemorrhagic fever virus, and there's 5 different strains of Ebola. And beginning the first outbreak we ever recognized of Ebola was in 1974, and that was more in Central Africa, in very rural areas. And we've had many outbreaks since then, but it's never involved more than 300 patients. And it's always been easily controlled and then eradicated. So this Ebola outbreak, which now has over 7,000 patients, over 4,000 deaths. I don't even give the numbers out anymore because it changes so rapidly every day now. Began in Guinea back in March of this year, and there actually probably were some earlier cases, and in very urban areas. And from there spread to Liberia and to Sierra Leone, and now basically is out of control.
Health officials in this country continue to tell us that Ebola will be controlled in this country. But a big concern about other countries. Are they equipped to handle Ebola, which is spreading from Western Africa?
Well, all of the countries in the world will remain at risk until we get the Ebola epidemic under control in Africa. And the Ebola experts now feel that it's no longer containable through quarantine, etc. What we need is a vaccine. And so what has happened, there's 2 advanced vaccine candidates that have already been tested in monkeys because it's non-human primates who mainly spread this virus. And they've just completed, our NIH has just completed a phase 1 trial on humans to make sure that humans tolerate, and they're going to very rapidly launch vaccine trials now. And they won't even be typical trials because ethically we can't even wait and do a typical trial. So they're going to launch very rapid vaccine trials in Africa to try and control this.
People who get sick will be vaccinated?
No, people who aren't sick.
Aren't sick.
I mean, they'll probably start with healthcare workers to protect them.
Okay.
So we have to realize there are people who will be leaving those countries who will be incubating Ebola, just like Mr. Duncan, the unfortunate patient who succumbed in Dallas a couple days ago. And he was perfectly healthy because it has a 2 to 21 day incubation period. So you can be infected and then you don't develop symptoms until you've actually transited through an airport to another country. Maybe even if you had your temperature checked at the airport, you would still have a normal temperature until you develop symptoms. The good thing about Ebola is you aren't contagious until you develop symptoms.
And prior to the finalization of the vaccine, though, there are things that are being done. For instance, even at St. Luke's, there are things being done because if someone comes into the hospital with Ebola, you have to take some strategies. What are those?
Right, and that's why we have added, like on our intranet, we have an Ebola icon where everyone who is employed at St. Luke's can go every day and find out what the latest updates are and what we're doing. Because what we have to be prepared for is we have to make certain that not a single patient gets into one of our clinics or our hospital who is contagious with Ebola and we don't know about it. So we have posted at the entrance to all of our clinics and to our hospital entrances, we have signs saying that if you have a fever and if you have been in one of these countries, and we have the map there, within the last 21 days, immediately notify the registrar. They're immediately put into isolation.
On another subject, doctor, I had a flu shot today. What am I protected against?
You're protected against influenza A and B. And that's the other thing is we have to keep in perspective here. We lose 20 to 40,000 American citizens every year to influenza and its complications. And so I don't think we should be losing sleep over the possibility that there's going to, and there will be some Ebola cases in the United States, but with our ability to quarantine and our advanced isolation precautions, we will not have the outbreaks that they're having in Africa. But influenza, that's very important. And that's why the CDC, everyone over the age of 6 months needs to get an influenza vaccine. They're safe, they are well established, the vaccine supply is here, so it's time to step up and do it. And if you don't want to do it for yourself, do it for your loved ones, do it for the people around you, for your little 3-month-old granddaughter or the person, the little child next door who's being treated for cancer.
Right. We wanted to ask you before we run out of time about the enterovirus because we've been hearing a lot about that. And just tell us what you can about the concerns for that and what we can do about it.
The enterovirus is a very unusual enterovirus. We've only seen it, this is only the third time we've seen it in the United States. It's called D68. And it causes, in a minority of children, we think there's thousands and thousands of cases, but in children, particularly children who have underlying problems with asthma and bronchospasm, it causes them to get into a very severe bronchospastic reaction. And in fact, just listening to one of the pediatric infectious disease specialists from Kansas City, which is where the biggest outbreak was. This is affecting the Midwest more than it is the coast. They have had more children in their hospital and in their ICUs than they had during the 2009 pandemic. And we know how hard that hit the children. So this really causes significant problems for a small percentage of children.
But if we catch it early enough, then you're going to be okay.
There's no treatment, just like for Ebola, there's no effective treatment right now. For enterovirus D68, there's no treatment, but what we really strongly counsel parents is, first of all, these children likely will not have a fever, unlike Ebola patients who will have a fever. They will not have a fever, but they will have this raspy cough. It'll be like a cold, but if they start having difficulty breathing, get in and get medical attention right away. Because what they need to do is they need to get them on oxygen, they need to get them on continuous nebulizations. So that's what we encourage them to do. The other thing is enteroviruses, part of that family is polioviruses. So now there's these children who are starting to develop polio-like syndrome. And about half of those children have been confirmed as being the enterovirus D68. We don't know the exact relationship, but that's another thing is if you have a child who suddenly starts developing weakness of the arms and legs, get them in.
Get that taken care of. No more time, but are they developing a vaccine for that?
For the enterovirus?
Yeah.
Not as much as they're working on the Ebola vaccine right now.
All right, well, here's hoping. Thank you so much for being with us. Really, a lot of great information.
Appreciate it very much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, now.
Okay.
Now, let's dig into our news file archive for a look at what was making news 25 years ago this week.
The familiar shell of old reserve mining hasn't changed much since it became Cypress Minerals North Shore Mining Company. But inside the idled plant, a flurry of men is helping resurrect the mother of northeastern Minnesota's taconite industry.
Well, when you first walked in here, it was dark, it was dingy, it looked like a can of worms. We had no idea until we started into it what we really had. And I must say, so far, knock on wood, we've been pleased. Things are coming up a lot better than we thought they would in a lot of the areas we thought would cause a lot of problems.
Cypress has hired over 150 employees to start the plant. Nearly all of them are from Minnesota. Nearly 90% of the contractors working on the project are from the state, too.
This is a Minnesota project, and it's designed to put jobs here in the state of Minnesota.
Since August, employees have been refurbishing or replacing damaged equipment at both the mine site in Babbitt and at the processing plant in Silver Bay. Old calendars and notes dating back to 1986 are reminders that this is no new venture. If all goes well, Cypress officials plan to hire 200 more employees in late November, and by December, the sounds of drilling and crushing and the alarm clocks of workers will again sound off in Babbitt and Silver Bay. At the old reserve mining facility in Silver Bay with photographer Sean Christie, John Gagnon, Katy Lights News.
What kind of creative economic ideas could be spurred by $5 million? Well, that's a question the Knight Foundation is asking through its Knight City Challenge. The Twin Ports is one of 26 regions in the running for a share of that $5 million. The details of the challenge were outlined at a news conference in Duluth this morning. Joining us now is Holly Sampson, president of the Duluth Superior Area Community Foundation. And Brian Hanson is executive director of Apex, a private sector-led business development organization here in the Twin Ports. Holly, can you tell us about the challenge? What kind of ideas are you looking for?
Yeah, this is really a Knight Foundation challenge that we're really excited about. They are looking for what are the best possible ideas that can make cities successful. And the other question that they ask in this idea challenge is, what might you learn from the project that you're putting forward? They also have 3 priorities, Denny, for this initiative. One is attracting and retaining talent. The second is expanding economic opportunity. And the third is creating a culture of civic engagement.
How are you going to be gathering those ideas? Who is eligible to propose ideas?
Yeah, that's a great question, and what makes this really unusual in kind of the grant-making world is that they will accept ideas from anyone. That is, individuals can go online and suggest an idea, businesses, for-profit institutions, government agencies, nonprofit organizations, really anybody across the community can submit ideas. So we want to see as many ideas as possible.
Brian, is Duluth well positioned for such a grant?
You know, Denny, I think that there are several organizations in the city of Duluth that have been doing really interesting things around talent, around opportunity, and around engagement that could all be great candidates for these funds. So
will you be groups of people be meeting together to try to field some questions then from the public? How is this going to work?
Yeah, you know, we at the Community Foundation hosted the first meeting this morning. We had Polly Talon up, who's a program director for the Knight Foundation, so we had an informational session and a Q&A for all the people that were interested. So we're just starting to get groups of people together to really think through what could be the best possible ideas. And again, we're talking about both communities of Duluth and Superior.
Why are the Twin Ports eligible for this?
So the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation supports 26 communities across the country, and those 26 communities are communities that held Knight Ridder newspapers. So when John and Jim Knight actually created the foundation, primarily at their death with a bequest, it was at that time that these 26 communities were Knight Ridder communities. So Duluth and Superior are really lucky that at that time we were a Knight Ridder newspaper.
Brian, can you talk to us a little bit about what Duluth already has in place? I mean, you know, there's been a great deal of change in this community in the last 15 years.
Absolutely. I'd really like to talk about one thing in particular, because not everything that would be eligible for this grant has to be a brand new idea. We've been working at Apex along with the folks at North Span Group and Twin Ports Connects with some very significant funders at City of Duluth, City of Superior, IRRB, the foundation, and also folks at St. Scholastica on a program called northforce.org. And it is really all about talent. It's about attracting, maintaining, placing, enriching, and retaining talent. And so we're just one example. There are many other examples, I believe, in the community as well.
I think it's important to recognize it's both Duluth and Superior.
That is right.
Absolutely, absolutely.
How realistic are the chances that the Twin Ports will get this?
You know, we need to do a great job. I think, as Brian said, we have great organizations and we have great ideas, but you know what? We're competing with St. Paul, Minnesota.
Yeah.
We're competing with Philadelphia. We're competing with Miami, San Jose, you know, lots of larger communities. So we want to put our heads together and bring the best possible ideas forward.
Other than what Brian mentioned, what are some of the other opportunities or ideas that you've heard so far?
Yeah.
Well, another one that some folks that I know were there this morning, and actually we may have an opportunity to work together, is the Destination Duluth website. Destination Duluth has been promoting our region and really pushing that civic engagement side, and I think we may have an opportunity to work together between northforce.org and Destination Duluth to make the total even better, and perhaps the night funds could help us with that.
So what could landing a grant mean for the Twin Ports? What would it do for these two communities?
You know, that's a great question, and it will really depend on what the actual project is. And again, projects can range from, you know, maybe it's $250,000, maybe it's $1 million, but and actually over time there will be $15 million devoted to this. So we, of course, are really, as Brian said, one of the things that we really are interested in is attracting and retaining talent. And we know that both North Force and Twin Ports Connects have done a great job at matching career opportunities with young people and others. We still have job opportunities available, and this would really move that forward.
Holly, Brian, thanks for telling us your story. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being with us.
A colorful period in the history of the Twin Ports comes to life in a new publication hitting local bookstores this month. Twin Ports by Trolley charts the history of the streetcar system that conquered the steep challenges posed by the hillsides of Duluth. With lots of historic photos and maps, the book unveils local transit history from the first horse-drawn streetcars to the incline railway. Joining us now is Aaron Isaacs, the author of Twin Ports by Trolley. And welcome, Aaron. What really made the Twin Ports stand out in your mind that it was worth a book on trolley cars in Duluth and Superior?
Well, of course, Duluth and Superior are like no other place almost anywhere that I can think of. I mean, here you have this seaport in the middle of the continent. You've got a street grid thrown over San Francisco-like hills, and all of this with severe winter weather. And of course, I was a co-author of Twin Cities by Trolley about the streetcars in Minneapolis and St. Paul. And the owners of Twin City Rapid Transit in the Twin Cities owned the Duluth Superior streetcar system, built and supplied all the streetcars for Duluth, built the incline railway for Duluth. And so once we did that book, this was a natural next step.
So how much does this encompass in terms of how many years and just how many different events, how many trolley lines? I mean, is it all encompassing?
It's all there. It started in 1886 with horse-drawn streetcars on Superior Street, and also a few rather intermittent streetcars over on the East End in Superior itself. The streetcars lasted till 1939. I continue a little bit further with the electric trolley buses. that were an unusual thing.
Yes,
They were the only ones in Minnesota, and they lasted until 1957, so they're kind of a footnote in the book.
Okay. Well, we have some great pictures from your book. Thank you very much for providing those, and maybe we can start by just talking a little bit about them. And here's an image with the horse.
Right. That's actually on Park Point, and the Minnesota Point Street Railway, when Duluth electrified their horse cars, they picked up a half a dozen of the old Duluth horse cars, and they ran them until 1899, summers only on Park Point.
Interesting. Okay, another one coming up shows, I think this is the first day of streetcar service. Does that sound right?
This is the first day of streetcar service to South Superior.
Okay.
And this is probably the most people who ever rode a streetcar to South Superior, because that line was really pretty quiet. But this was a big celebration. This was 1890.
And some of the trainmen, they had quite a job.
Yeah, this is at the car house out at 26th Avenue West and Superior Street, right across from where the Duluth Transit Authority buses are to this day. And
so I was going to ask, streetcars ran in the winter as well as the summer?
How did
they ran in the
stuff?
winter, but they had great big plows that would plow it. This, of course, is on Park Point, just beyond the aerial bridge. And it was worse out there than it was in Duluth itself, because they get the full brunt of the storms off Lake Superior. Here you have a streetcar coming around Point of Rocks.
Did it take some special engineering, construction, that kind of thing to get those cars around in Duluth?
Well, they added a couple of extras. For example, the streetcars, as they were built for the Twin Cities, had sanders where they'd put sand on the rails to try for ice and snow. In Duluth, they had double sanders. They had them in front of the front wheels as well as the back wheels. And then, of course, they had these big snow plows to clear the track, but it was challenging.
Why did streetcars go out of style?
Well, they were basically supplanted by the automobile and by buses. The Great Depression cut the streetcar ridership in half, and the company went bankrupt in 1931. And it was simply much more, they were a for-profit company. And as the fares went down, they had less money to deal with. Well, it costs more to run streetcars than it cost to run buses, because they had to maintain the tracks, they had to maintain the power system and the overhead wires. You didn't have those expenses with buses. They also had to plow the snow for no money at all under the city requirement, but when you had buses, you didn't have to do that. So it was a way of keeping going.
Is there another future for streetcars, or am I dreaming?
Well, rail transit is back. Once the streetcar companies and the transit system shifted to public ownership, public subsidy became possible. And so since 1980, there have been something like 24 cities that have built rail lines, including the Twin Cities, with the Blue Line and the new Green Line that just opened this summer.
One of the most famous lines, of course, in Duluth was the incline. We have a picture of that, and we'd like you to just talk briefly about that one.
Well, the reason the incline was built was for the real estate development in Duluth Heights. Because Thomas Lowry, who owned the streetcar company, was one of the partners in the Duluth Heights development. Well, how do you get up the hill? It was too steep for steel on wheel on steel rail adhesion, so you needed a cable-powered incline that could get to the top of the hill, and it went up as far as 8th Street, and there it met a little isolated 2-mile streetcar line that went the rest of the way up to Duluth Heights. By the way, the development was never that successful.
Just a couple more pictures to show, and while we're showing those, could you just tell us why you think it's important that people know the history of the streetcars and the trolleys? Why is this an important story to tell?
Well, this is really the transportation mode that caused how the cities developed. Well, I didn't say that very well. That caused the development of the city. It shaped the city. That's how everyone got around until the 20s or 30s, when automobiles started to become more common.
Where can your book be purchased, Aaron?
Well, it's going to hit the bookstores in November. This right here is just a proof copy, and it'll be hardcover. And it'll definitely be on sale down at the Union Depot, and it should be in bookstores elsewhere throughout the city.
And we understand you have a couple signings in the Duluth and Twin Ports area?
Right. I'll be at the Lake Superior Railroad Museum on next Saturday, the 18th, and then over at the Douglas County Historical Society that afternoon. So 11 o'clock at the museum and 3 o'clock over at Douglas County.
Wonderful.
Great.
Aaron, thank you so very much for being with us.
Thanks very much.
Nice meeting you.
Thank you very kindly.
Bye.
It's time now for the week's business news from Business North. A leading journalist in northwestern Wisconsin has passed away. Mike Simonson of KUWS and Wisconsin Public Radio died October 5th at his Duluth home. 25 years ago, the respected radio journalist helped to establish the Superior Bureau of WPR. During his tenure, he was honored with 2 National Headliner Awards, a Public Radio News Director Award, and the Edward R. Murrow Award. He also founded the Final Edition program, which featured a free-flowing discussion with local journalists, and Radio Superior, a reenactment of Twin Ports radio programs beginning in the 1940s. Simonson was 57 years old.
And Pam, Mike was a dear friend and colleague as well. Minnesota Department of Natural Resources officials anticipate an early spring completion of the final environmental impact statement for Polymet Mining Company's proposed mine near Hoyt Lakes. The project will generate about 2 million construction hours during a 15-month period. Polymet says the long-term benefits include creation of more than 900 direct and indirect jobs and a $515 million annual economic benefit to the region. If the EIS is okayed, the company must also obtain a number of state and federal air and water quality permits.
A ribbon cutting and open house were held this week to celebrate 85 years of business and growth for Alltech Highline. The company makes high-reaching vehicle-mounted aerial lift devices at a factory in the Duluth Port Terminal and in Alabama. The company was founded in 1929, and the Duluth operation was established in 2002 and was recently expanded. Expansion of manufacturing, warehouse, and office space increased the company's production capabilities, upgraded technology, and improved efficiency. The company's products are primarily used by electric utility firms that need to safely reach power transmission lines. For more on these and other business stories, please visit businessnorth.com.
If you have a comment, now's the time to call. Dial 218-788-2849 to leave a message or send an email to Almanac North at WDSC.org. You can also visit the WDSC website for updates on your favorite PBS shows, program schedules, and news and events at the station. And Pam, as always, great to have you here.
Well, good to be here. It's always a good time.
All right, thank you. For Pamela and the crew here at WDSC, I'm Dennis Anderson. Have a great weekend. Good night, everybody, and be kind.